The show was so big, we had to do it in 3 segments, talking about new offensive coordinators around the National Football League. It is the Audible, Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, and the Raiders. All right, Gardner Minshew. All right, Aiden O'Connell. All right, Luke Getsy. Was he actually the whiz kid
Right.
behind Aaron Rodgers instead of Nathaniel Hackett? Yeah, I don't know. We'll see now with the Raiders. Another opportunity for Getsy to get it right.
Yeah, this feels more like a retread hire, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this feels more like Ken Dorsey or Alex Van Pelt, like a retread hire. And okay, Antonio Pierce. I mean, we know that no matter who the offensive coordinator was going to be, that Zamir White was going to be a pretty important player, and that was going to be their style of football here. You do, however, add Brock Bowers. I guess that's the exam, speaking about in terms of exams and quizzes, for Luke Getsy is Luke Getsy. Here's the good news. Here, see, so I'm going to put a positive spin on this. You ready? Here's the good news. Because Luke Getsy hasn't really had any tremendous success, unless you did have that year with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how much you could say that has to do with. Let's not fall into that trap again.
Right.
Let's not fall into the Adam Gase trap again. Okay, and let's say this: Luke Getsy doesn't really have any past success that he's going to try to copy. Like, oh, you hired me, so I do the system that I did here that was good.
Right.
So
That's what you liked.
Right. So hopefully he just looks at like Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, the power element that Zamir White brings, and just says, well, let's make an offense around what we have. And then you have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Now that's a potential limiting factor. But at the same time, if you look at Aiden O'Connell's numbers last year as a 4th-round rookie, and you look at it in that context, Cease, and you say, well, compare him to not Dak Prescott, okay, because he was in an ideal situation. But you're not going to find many third-day picks that don't just get blown off the field like a tidal wave, right? When we think about the other quarterbacks that got in, the late-round picks and the undrafted free agents, they were trying to just hang on to a tree in a hurricane sometimes, but not Aiden O'Connell. He didn't look overwhelmed, and
Right.
you hope and we're gonna have the quarterback competition. If assuming it's an open competition, although if it's a tie, shouldn't the tie go to O'Connell? Because wow, if he actually just is competent, that opens up more possibilities in team building. You don't have to force the quarterback pick if he's at least competent. What they're hoping to get out of Will Levis. Speaking of a second-year quarterback who could do something with his opportunity. So Aiden O'Connell is going to be part of the story, or maybe his absence is going to be part of the story, that he just wasn't even good enough for them to give him another chance. But I think with Luke Getsy, like I said, Cease, the most positive spin I can come up with is, well, he isn't going to be too single-minded because there's nothing that successful for him to copy.
Yeah, not successful for him to copy, but there's some copying going on in New Orleans. There's Clint Kubiak. Hi, Clint. Saw him at the Shrine game when Emmanuel Sanders was there. That was 2010. Clint was a safety coming out of CSU. Anyway, not a Broncos show, kind of a Colorado show, but Clint Kubiak now in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So we know the offense.
Right.
We, waiting to see the effectiveness of Alvin Kamara. So, like, in this offense, Derek Carr could look good.
Yeah.
If Clint Kubiak can look better.
Right. Cease. I mean, we draw this. Is it fair to say you draw the bloodlines of this all the way back to Mike Shanahan? Is that fair?
Yeah, and even further to Bill Walsh.
It's a
But
Bill
yeah,
Walsh.
it's a Shanahan system.
So you think of, I always think of like Jake Plummer and Brian Greasy. Nobody is going to say that these guys were significantly above average when we think of the landscape of NFL starting quarterbacks. But when they were in that offense, they were.
Yes.
At least statistically, in terms of analytics metrics. And I think it's because the offense sets up these very pre-formulated choices that simplify the game for the quarterback. And Derek Carr, I think, can fit very well in something like that. Here's what I would toss it back to you, Cease. And I was excited that we were going to get to talk about Kubiak because it delves into a lot of your experience. How significant of a change is this going from because now you're covering Sean Payton, right? This offense, Pete Carmichael, et cetera, was still a descendant of the Sean Payton offense. So you're going to the Kubiak offense. You're going to the Walsh-Shanahan kind of system. How significant of a change is that going to be? Is this going to be one of those offenses that maybe like first half of the year could have some bumps? And then, like you said, Kamara, Kendre Miller, these guys are important to make that running game click. but it is going to be a run game based offense in a different way than it was before. How significant is that change? Should we be patient with this offense?
Can Derek Carr speak Mandarin? That's how it's because it's a language thing. These concepts are, universal, whatever, like they've been around a while. So the concepts are different, as you mentioned. Like it'll be running to set up the pass, it'll be play action passing, it'll be rollouts and bootlegs.
Right.
All things Derek Carr can master if he can master the language, which is very complicated. Gary Kubiak almost overly, and I mean, I get to talk to Sean Payton once a week. Like,
Right.
this is a overly complicated language.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I do think we need to build that in with this one and some of these other ones where it's
Sure.
when it's a philosophical change. We'll check in week 4, week 6, but check back in like week 10. These could be an offense like down the stretch, like a racehorse coming down the stretch when it starts to really make sense. Kind of like what happened with Baltimore and their passing game in the second half of the year last year. So I do think it's a good change. And I think if you're looking for winners from this change, I mean, Derek Carr is a winner in so much as he'll look better. He'll play better.
Yes.
He could stick around longer with this team. But for fantasy, there's a significant opportunity in this running game for Kendre Miller because, like you said, Kamara is a little more of a wild card. Where is he at in his career arc? And Miller has a skill set that you think about him in a zone running game, and you like what you picture.
Yeah, you like what you picture in Tampa if they kind of do what they were doing. So Liam Cohen, a lot of pressure here because it's not like, okay, the last guy was trash, you got to do something. It's like, no, the last guy was pretty good. You just couldn't keep him. So now Liam Cohen, welcome.
What's interesting about this one, well, it became more interesting with some news out of OTAs. But of course, the interesting thing here is that the Baker Mayfield comeback story starts with Liam Cohen in Los Angeles with the Rams.
Yep.
That's when it starts. And likewise, the story of Will Levis. He wasn't a first round pick, but he was a quarterback that's going to get a chance to be his franchise's long term starting quarterback. That story also starts with Liam Cohen. So all the excuses that were made for Levis, I'm sorry, maybe I'm being value laden when I say excuses. The story went that, well, Cohen went to the Rams in 2022. So he had to learn a new offense, Levis did. But if you look at the Levis in the Cohen offense, that's the first round pick. That's the guy you want. Likewise, Baker Mayfield started that comeback story with Cohen, and Cohen said that was one of the big reasons he took the job. Whoa. So what we're hearing out of OTAs that's interesting enough, Cecil, is this is going to be complicated. You talked about Mandarin, Chinese. This is going to be complicated. Cohen's going to challenge Mayfield in terms of complication and extending that comfort level. He believes in him. And together, you could imagine them together. Cease again, the war room, right? Like the map and all of the different pieces representing things and the light hanging overhead. And Cohen and Mayfield are going to put their heads together and say, like, we're going to take the NFC South down. Like, we're going to go another step from what Canales was able to do in the offense. That's exciting. And when you have Evans and you have Godwin and Jalen McMillan, who could be a great addition, you have Rachaad White, again, receiving out of the backfield. This is another one we might be underestimating. Normally, Cease, I think that you would say, oh, the calculation here is how much do they lose because Canales went to Carolina. And again, all these things are interrelated. Whatever you think about Canales and how much he helped Tampa, will translate that over to Carolina and Bryce Young. But this is that rare case but that could be replaced and maybe more because Mayfield is working with an offensive coordinator that sought him out, that had success with him, even turned his career around the last time they were together.
Speaking of Moore, let's talk about Kellen Moore in Philadelphia and no more tush push. Like, all right, okay. Well, what will it look like? How much pressure will be put on Jalen Hurts in this system? And how does the offense respond now with Kellen Moore leading the way?
Remember when Kellen Moore was going to turn Justin Herbert into like stratosphere quarterback?
Yeah, I remember when Vic Fangio was would beat up on Kellen Moore's Kellen Moore's offense couldn't do anything against Fangio's defense, and he's
Right.
like, "I thought that guy was on the short. Take him off your short list." I think that's what he said because Kellen Moore was going to be a head coach, remember?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Kellen Moore is not a head coach. He's kind of trying to rejuvenate things. But Howie Roseman, I love him so. If there's any place that can get you right, it's Philadelphia.
That's great, Cease. If you were mischievous and you were an Eagles beat writer, you
Mm,
might bring that up to Vic and Kellen, maybe even when they were
uh-huh.
together, just to see the reaction
Right,
now that these
right,
guys are working together,
right.
in Philadelphia. I mean, and I think with Vic Fangio, Vic is certainly not a retread. Vic's a Hall of Famer. Okay. I mean,
Sure.
Vic is like getting to
Mhm.
bring in Yoda or someone like that, Kellen Moore, kind of a retread, kinda, because again, Kellen Moore, whenever he was, I don't know if there's a word for this, Cease, but it's when the team says, if you want to look for a job, we're not telling you can't, it's not firing, it's not really even quitting, it's just this thing like, it's not even an open marriage. I don't know what you would call it, but Kellen Moore immediately goes to the Chargers. And the reception among football types is like, oh yeah, this is going to be good.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
everyone's going to see that what was good about the Cowboys offense has to do with Kellen Moore.
Mhm.
And again, it was Schottenheimer and McCarthy actually that put that pass offense at a level that Kellen Moore didn't. And actually, you put the jeweler's eye look closer. Kellen Moore is a run heavy coach, so this is going to be a run heavy Eagles offense. Good for Saquon Barkley. You want to tell the story of how Saquon Barkley becomes everything we hoped he could be as a fantasy football running back. That is part of the story. Uh, but you also want to get this offense out of the doldrums. I think they're missing Shane Steichen last year. Obviously, they weren't satisfied with what they had. And will Kellen Moore improve it? Will Jalen Hurts improve it? Will Saquon Barkley improve it? And the offensive line is there. It's going to be a top half of the league offense, but is it going to be one of the elite offenses? We haven't really associated Kellen Moore with elite offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, what about elite quarterback play potentially from Caleb Williams with Shane Waldron in Chicago now? There's going to be a lot of pressure because they cleaned out everyone except the head coach,
Right.
and then like what? Like, huh? Like, and now like Caleb Williams is going to be playing for a second staff in
Mm-hmm.
Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Is Shane Waldron part of that staff? Is
Right.
Shane Waldron running the show?
Right.
These are the questions for the future of Chicago.
Yeah. And if you're Matt Eberflus and you're saying, the guy in the hot dog costume. We're all looking for the guy who did this, made this team underachieve. It was
Wait
the
a second,
offensive
I thought you were going to
coordinator.
do the "Ask me about my wiener."
Right, right. The nod to Mark Sanchez. But, and Luke Getsy is the guy, right? Luke Getsy's the fall guy, even though the Raiders looked at Luke Getsy and said, yeah, we want you to lead our offense. Um, I think that Shane Waldron and the decision to hire Shane Waldron is going to determine whether Eberflus keeps this job, and was the most important decision of his head coaching tenure.
Mhm.
Waldron can save his job, and Caleb Williams can save his job, obviously, uh, and obviously together. And Waldron, coming from the Sean McVay tree, certainly you look at what he did with Geno Smith and you feel good about that. Geno Smith did drop off last year, though, when Dave Canales went to Tampa Bay. So, I mean,
Hmm.
again, all these things are interrelated where we're saying this was successful or this was a failure in the past, and we have some sort of picture of who was responsible. Like in court, comparative negligence. You're 60% responsible. You're 40% responsible. But then we revise that as we see what all of these characters do later stops down the line. And I think Shane Waldron, you're bringing him in and you're saying, we've given you everything. We talked about New England as a fixer-upper, right? This is a turnkey, going real estate, a turnkey offense. The offensive line has been rebuilt. You brought in Keenan Allen. You drafted Rome Odunze. You traded for DJ Moore. You even signed DeAndre Swift. I mean, it's all there. All the pieces are there. Waldron just needs to deploy them in a way for this Bears offense to actually be kind of exciting, kind of innovative. And it's all going to be centered on Caleb Williams, but whether it's a success or not may depend more on how Shane Waldron, and I think the challenge for Waldron sees is like we talked about. There's the McVay tree, and there's this idea of, well, he has a success he's copying. We're bringing you in to put in a McVay, Shanahan, like you said, trace it all the way back up to Walsh if you want that kind of offense. But can you do it in a way that reflects the expectations? So, you sometimes might want to ramp up a rookie quarterback, like he's going to take his lumps, but it's going to build character, and he's going to really understand what the limits and boundaries are in this offense. But can you do it in a way that is getting him up to speed and maybe having a thinner playbook at first that creates the confidence and the momentum to really get this thing going right away?
Do we know, Mo? Well, we know that we need your help here on YouTube. About 50% of you that watch are not subscribed, so please change that now and help us out on YouTube by liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss a vid here on Football Guys with all 3 of our channels. Subscribe to them all and check out footballguys.com. You want to support the show, subscribe to footballguys.com. And sign up for our free daily newsletter. If you like that, then sign up for our subscription, please. And thank you. He is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter, X at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying. The show is at the Audible. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.